All right.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 2024 Form-Based Code Area Working Group meeting. For the record, my name is Daniel Weir. I am the Planning Commission representative and chair of the AWG. We are holding a virtual public meeting today for all participants joining us remotely, orienting everyone to the virtual environment to cover a few specifics about how today's meeting will be run. It's available to join from the Form-Based Code Area Working Group webpage, the county's excuse me, events calendar, and at the top of today's agenda. Additionally, there's a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. If anyone loses internet connectivity during tonight's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your video turned off and microphone muted until you're called upon. Turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. And the tools to do so are located as icons in your toolbar or command bar. If you don't see it, try tapping or clicking on the center of the screen and it will pop up. When called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on your command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. If you're dialing in by phone, you will press *6 to unmute, and when you're finished speaking, press *6 to again remute your microphone. The meeting chat is active for participants who need technical assistance only and should not be used for discussion, for public comment, for questions about agenda items, for requests for more information, etc. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony periods. Some additional notes for AWG members. If AWG members wish to be recognized to speak on an item, please turn your video feed on and leave your microphone muted. I will use the video feeds that are on as an indicator of who'd like to speak. Once you've been recognized, then please unmute. And once you've completed speaking, please turn off your video feed. And I ask that you use the raise hand functionality as well. I'll be looking for both. I especially like the raise hand because it shows me who raised their hand first. I don't see anyone connected by phone, but if if anyone does end up connecting by phone, I believe that you all have my cell phone, and send me a text if you need to call my attention to it. I'll keep my eye on the list, and we'll proceed. For any public speakers who are with us tonight, you'll be called on to speak at the end of the meeting, and you'll be muted when your time is concluded. And a reminder to everyone that this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website, and all information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. Ms. Kostelecki, my apologies. I'm sure that I butchered that. I saw that your hand was raised. I'm assuming you were just testing the functionality out, but if you needed to raise any issues, let me call on you briefly before we go to Ms. Sontag.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And if we do have anyone, I don't think we have anyone here who is here to give public comment, but if we do have anyone here who's here to give public comment, that's a really good thing to use the chat for, just to say that you intend to give public comment, and we will get to you at the end of the AWG's discussion. Ms. Sontag, I'm going to yield the floor to you, and I'm going to be audio only for a few moments, so apologies in advance for any delay in acknowledging any raised hands that might come up. Ms. Sontag.
No worries, and I'll try to help you keep an eye on those too. So I'll begin with a staff presentation, and then the applicant also has a presentation to share. We did try to post these materials in advance, so hopefully you were able to review those, as well as the form-based code review checklist that's been posted online. So this is the Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group meeting for review of the 2801 Columbia Pike development project, also known as the Elkins Building, or in some cases, the Frame Shop. So to orient everybody quickly to the site within the Columbia Pike corridor, this is the GLUP map, which shows the neighborhood's area boundaries as note 24 and 24A. And then the commercial nodes are shown as note 8. This site is within the town center commercial nodes, and it's designated as service commercial. The site's located on the northeast corner of Columbia Pike and South Walter Reed Drive, and is adjacent to the Fillmore Gardens Shopping Center. The property is just under 20,000 square feet, and the existing building is approximately 11,000 square feet, with ground floor retail and some office space above. So the site is zoned C2 Service Commercial Community Business District, and it's within the Columbia Pike Commercial Form-Based Code. The applicant has opted to use the optional zoning tool of the Form-Based Code to pursue a use permit for site redevelopment. The site has a designated historic building and a Main Street building envelope standard on both the Columbia Pike and the Walter Reed frontage. And then you can also see in red the required building line, which the existing building in orange you can see is forward of that required building line. And that's just important to note because, as you may have seen in the checklist, there are a number of building envelope standards that, because of the historic facade preservation on the site, this project is not able to meet. But there are allowances for that, which we'll talk about in a minute. So again, the applicant is preserving the historic facade of the building as is called for in the form-based code. They're proposing a 7-story multifamily building, which includes a 1-story bonus as is allowed in the form-based code for preserving that historic facade. And then the ground floor would have some amenity space accessed off of Walter Reed Drive with about 6,000 square feet of retail fronting both Walter Reed and Columbia Pike. The building would have 88 units with 63 one-bed and 25 two-bed, 64 parking spaces and 36 bike parking spaces. The site also has a number of frontage improvements, as is called for in the form-based code and in the Columbia Pike multimodal improvements plan and others for Walter Reed Drive. So for preservation of the historic facade, and a large concentration of some existing utilities make some of these streetscape improvements fairly challenging. But on Columbia Pike, the applicant has designed the facade to accommodate a transit station and a transit station shelter recessed within the facade, as well as raising the curb height to 9 inches to facilitate that transit station. And then they're also providing a 6-foot minimum sidewalk width along the frontage and streetscape improvements like bike racks, waste bins, benches, light poles, and where feasible, although we're still working on this portion of it, trees. And then on the South Walter Reed Drive side, we're looking at a curb extension and a transit island with a 9-inch curb height, an on-street bike lane, a 6-foot minimum sidewalk width, and some of those other streetscape elements. So there's several special circumstances and modifications that the site qualifies for. Specifically for historic facades, it qualifies for modifications to the parking requirements for the portion of the project that includes historic facades. I will note, though, that they are exempt from parking requirements because the site is under that 20,000 square feet. So they meet both. And then they also are allowed modifications for utility undergrounding. Again, I think this facade is forward of the RBL, so it does present some challenges with providing some of those streetscape improvements. Modification of the provision of street furniture. And then it also allows up to a 2-story bonus. And they are requesting a 1-story bonus and have provided some of that appropriate design and tapering on the site, which has been reviewed and supported by the HLRB. And then other allowable modifications that are maybe applicable to this site include, again, those required building lines for the locations of streets and for the historic facades, any design issues that are related to the inclusion of those existing buildings and historic facades, for example, street trees, other streetscape details, and then a host of other modifications associated with those special circumstances that we noted above for the historic facades. So some other form-based code requirements to highlight include the requirement for the proposal to be reviewed by the HLRB. So a minimum of 2 meetings. It requires a certificate of appropriateness from the HLRB, as well as a historic preservation easement. So the applicant has attended 3 HLRB meetings and a total of 5 design review committee meetings. They did get issued a certificate of appropriateness from the HLRB in July of 2023, and then a preservation easement will be included in the use permit conditions as required. And then for private open space, it's a Main Street BES frontage, so they're required to have 15%. As you can see here, between the courtyard, the rooftop terrace, and some private balconies, they're proposing a total of 20% for the site. For parking, again, no minimum requirement for historic facades, and they're proposing a total of 64 spaces in the garage for the residential use. So that'll be 54 compact, 54 standard spaces, 8 compact, and 2 ADA spaces. And then for bike parking, there's a number of different requirements for both the residential area and for the retail space. They're not exempt from bike parking requirements. So they are providing 32 spaces, secure spaces in the garage, and then a total of 4 spaces, including 2 racks on street. So this is a diagram of the form-based code use permit process. Many of you are probably very familiar with this. We are here with the review with AWG. Our next step will be to resolve any outstanding issues, and then bring this item to any remaining public meetings, which in this case will be Planning Commission, and then eventually County Board meetings. And then finally, the review process. This project was originally submitted in September of 2022. Again, I think the challenges with the preservation of the facade and some of those utility conflicts along the frontage have required some back and forth and quite a number of HLRB meetings, but we are nearing the finish line here with the AWG, and we anticipate bringing this to Planning Commission in September and County Board in September. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to try to share the applicant's presentation. Give me just one moment. All right, Louise, let me know when you can see this and go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I can see you have it up there perfectly. Good evening, everyone. Louise Zwicker with Odin Feldman Piddleman. I'm standing in for Sarah Mariska, who had a conflict this evening, so I'll try not to let her down. Here with the team, in case you guys have any questions that I can't answer, I have John Regan from Christopher Companies, Dave McElhaney and Chase Allen from Urban Engineering, and Angela Kostelecki from Devereaux Associates. Please tell me I got that right. So obviously cover slide just shows the building as it looks today. All right, I'm going to do this, Olivia. Just next slide, please. As you can see, it's a very small, as Olivia said in a great presentation, it's a very small, very constrained site, 20,000 square feet, already has an existing building, and it fronts on 2 major roads. The next slides 3 through 6 just give you some elevations of the building as it looks today. It is the historic facade is listed in the form-based code to be preserved. So that added another level of complexity, as Olivia has already said, in addition to all the utilities that are in the roads. So it's been a very challenging site, but I think we've come through. We've worked hard to balance the needs of the historic facade preservation, plus accommodating the improvements that are going on with Walter Reed Drive and Columbia Pike. So if we go to slide 8, design considerations, which I've just run ahead of the slide. Also, most of the form-based code requirements that we were unable to meet was due to our site constraints, specifically the historic facade and the Columbia Pike and Walter Reed Drive improvements. It's been a very robust process with the design review board, the HALRB. And when we get to slide 10, this is an image of what has been approved, the design that's been approved by the HALRB. I think it's the next one. So we've just talked about all of this. And I can go back if anyone, but most of this Olivia already covered in her presentation. So this is the approved elevation. As you can see, it's cleaned up the facade while it's maintained it, and the residential floors above fit nicely in to make it a really sleek, really good looking building. You can see at the bottom, the Columbia Pike is on the right and Walter Reed is on the left. The first floor retail is being maintained. The next slide actually shows where the retail and the amenities are in plan view, to give you a little more context. The amenity is actually a second floor courtyard. You can see the retail on both sides. We've got some additional elevations on the next 4 slides. You can see the parking underneath, which is accessed by an alley in the rear. And we can just flick through those. The building that's shown, just to let you know, the building that's shown sort of ghosted back adjacent to it is no longer there, but we're anticipating another building will be there. So we can just flick through the next slides and you can see the second floor courtyard. Okay. And then the next slide shows slide 19. Wait a second, what slide are we on? 18. Shows the amenity courtyard. I can't see what slide number I've got. Can we go to the next one? These are just the elevations. There we go, sorry. The second floor amenity courtyard. And then the next slide shows the rooftop amenity. And the last slide shows some cross-section details. And you can see on Columbia Pike where the transit stop has been integrated into the facade of the building. That's it for the presentation. Olivia did a really good job. She didn't leave me very much to say. So does anyone have any questions?
Thanks, Louise. I guess we'll turn it back over to Commissioner Weir for the discussion.
Thank you. Ms. Sontag, are there any specific areas of discussion that you wanted the AWG to weigh in on? Sometimes we have a bullet list of, please weigh in on these areas. But if not, I'm going to go straight to Glenn to kick us off.
Yeah, we can kick it off with just some general questions, and then I can highlight a few things if needed. But I think we highlighted most of the challenges that are in the design.
Yeah, I think that's right. All right, so I want to start with I do want to start with informational questions, factual questions. Glenn, if that's not where you're at, then I don't, for want of any other hands, I invite you. You have the floor, but then we're going to go to Ms. Dye.
Okay, well, these are informational. Being relatively new to this committee and not having seen this building before, not officially other than what's been in the press and all that, I had a couple of questions just so I understand the building a little bit. The second floor, that amenity, the little courtyard. And so what wraps around the courtyard? Is that still office space now on the second floor?
No, those will be, I believe those are the multifamily units. Or
Those
the,
are
oh,
dwelling
here's,
units, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So it's resident, all above the ground floor is all residential now.
yeah, and I brought up the elevation that
sir.
shows the courtyard.
If you go back to that first level plan, that has it shows the retail and the first floor, that plan. What's in green there is the residential amenity space, and then the blue area is all retail.
But that's first floor. I'm asking about
That's
the
first
second
floor.
floor.
Second floor is just the courtyard, yes. And then there's rooftop amenity.
Okay, I
I
guess I'm
think
still
the
confused. What wraps around that
Sorry.
courtyard?
around it is residential units. This is John Regan from the Christopher Companies.
Okay, that's what I was asking. So it's
Yes.
all residential above
Yes, sir.
ground floor.
Yes.
Okay. I'd
Yes,
love
sir.
to see, of course, I'm an architect, so I always want to see plans, but I'd love to see the second floor plan to add some clarity to how it all works. And then the other is also sort of an architectural question. So and I know we're not really design review here, but what is the material, the exterior? Is that glazed brick of some sort, or what is the exterior material that creates that gray facade?
Well, we're maintaining the existing building, which is precast panels of a cream color. And then above that, we're doing a cementitious siding and cementitious panels. So those the bands that you see that kind of mimic the horizontal banding of the existing building, those are cementitious panels, Cardi
Okay.
panel.
So the light gray are panels
Mhm.
and the darker gray is
Fiber cement siding.
fiber cement. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. All right. I just was curious because I mean, with this kind of streamlined modern look, I was thinking it might be glazed brick or something that had a kind of texture to it. But, again, I know we're not really design review, so I really wanted to just understand the building a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dye, you're up.
Thank you. Can you all talk about the transit shelter that's been recessed into the facade and give us what the dimensions are, how far back in it's recessed in terms of, as we know, in this area of the Pike, the sidewalks are really constricted, and we don't have nearly the kind of room we've got in other areas of the Pike. So in terms of putting the benches, how far recessed back is that in terms of actually being a practical place to sit, and also what is the height of that recessed section that folks will be sitting on the benches?
Angela, you want to answer that one? Angela?
I'm sorry. I had to unmute myself. We actually did a drawing that we presented to the DRC on that. And I am trying to pull my version of that up right now. So the actual transit center, the transit stop recesses about 4 feet under the building. And then the building has a 16-inch canopy over top. So in total, it's about 5'4" deep. And then the height that we were able to get is approximately 10'4" tall.
Okay. Is
And
there any,
in width, it's about 16 feet wide. So we were planning on 2 benches.
right, okay. Is there room, since the plan for bus shelters in general is to have an informational display? is there no way to accommodate that kind of thing, or is it strictly there'll be benches, and I assume that, or maybe I shouldn't assume anything. Will there be a standard flag out closer to the street?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. How this whole this is John Regan of the Christopher Companies. This was all all the different meetings we had with the county staff, all the committee meetings we had was really that the facade, the big where the rubber meets the road, was that the Historic Preservation Committee really did not want the building to be moved back. Transportation wanted to be moved back to be able to put a bus shelter closer to where the flag is. And so the compromise position was that we basically came up with an idea of tucking the benches underneath of the building to provide shelter to someone who wants to get on the bus, because this does have heavy bus traffic right at this location. And then that allowed the good width between the bus shelter and the like bus stops, the flag that's out on the street. Your question about putting some posters or some information, I think that the panels that are on that, on our building, we can, if we find out what they are, I think we can accommodate some of that area.
Okay, sounds good. My biggest concern as someone who's been riding the Columbia Pike buses for decades is that it actually be set deep enough that it actually is practical to sit on the bench and people trying to pass walking on the sidewalk.
Yes,
folks with
absolutely.
strollers, things like that. So great. People have considered that. Great.
Absolutely. And if you could bring the first picture up of the front of the building, I think there's the actual building, the physical building. I think it's like the first. Keep going. That you see that tree that's currently right there. One of the requests made by transportation was that tree has to be removed because they want 60 feet of clear space. So that, like, for example, right now, that tree pit will be removed and concrete filled in there. The trash can and things like that will still be there, but that tree will be removed. So there will be about 11 feet between the curb pan and the side of the building. And then it'll have the additional, what Angela said, the depth of the bus shelter as well.
Okay. Yep. This is really tricky trying to balance everything out.
Absolutely.
We want 6 foot clear sidewalk space. We also want a functioning transit stop. So we want a lot of good things, and trying to blend them. This is one of the trickier ones for sure.
Absolutely.
On the Pike. My second question is about the transit island on Walter Reed. I'm not familiar with that concept. Can someone describe in a little more detail what that's all about? The transit island on Walter Reed?
That's the county. You'll have to. That's not
Oh.
a proposal. That's not a proposal made by us.
Olivia, or is there anybody in the meeting now who has any information about it? This is the first time I've heard about a transit island.
It's part of the Columbia Pike Transit capital plan.
For Walter Reed, okay, and I'm not familiar.
For Columbia Pike and Walter Reed, yeah.
Right, and I've been very familiar with all the work that's been taking place for years. I just hadn't heard of a traffic island. My next question is on slide 16, which depicts the west elevation, and it shows the alley. Can you all talk about what the width of the alley is, and is it designed to accommodate pedestrians in addition to vehicles? Is there a screen or wall Because my understanding is there should be a screen or a wall on the outside of the alley, and what kind of lighting along the alley?
Can you get to aisle 16? Did we?
I think Olivia may have frozen.
Oh no.
Oh, that has happened a couple of times. No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry. Yeah, I froze for a second. Which slide, John? You might have to describe the slide because I can't see slide numbers.
Hold on.
It
Yeah.
says
hold
it
on.
says west elevation, and it shows the alley on the left side of it. The west elevation.
There we go.
Uh,
The alley is approximately, it's 19 and a half feet, I believe.
Okay.
Olivia, you're no longer sharing, FYI.
yeah.
Oh, apologies. There we go.
Frozen in, not being able to be seen.
There we go.
All right. Thanks for hanging in there.
Is it
The-
is it
it's the-
designed to accommodate pedestrians or strictly two narrow lanes for vehicular traffic?
Dave McElhaney, can you address the issues that we came up with and then we had to accommodate?
Yeah, hopefully there's not as much feedback. This is Dave with Urban. Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth with our design team as well as with the county with regard to the alley. The alley is predominantly set up for vehicular movements. It's not really a set up for pedestrian movements. We actually widened it from what its current width is today. It varies in width. Gets actually as narrow as roughly 14 feet. As Olivia pointed out, we're roughly 19 and a half feet now. And we look carefully at turning movements for loading trucks and emergency vehicles and vehicles coming in and out of our parking garage. And so we tried to maximize as much as we could that alley just to make sure we had good, safe vehicular access in and out of the site. And so that's kind of the background in summary with regards to how we designed that alley. We looked at a couple of different options, again, in terms of adjusting the width somewhat, but ultimately what we came up with was the design is what was shown on the other slide. But it is, again, set up for vehicular access. The pedestrian access is around, obviously, the road frontage portions of the site.
Is there a screen/wall? Because my understanding is that there needs to be some sort of a wall defining that this is the alley that goes with
I think there was a
building.
picture. There is, I think, part of the presentation. There's a picture. I don't know, Olivia, if you want to, if that is in there to advance to it. I don't know which slide it is, though.
Was it a photo or a?
Because I don't recall seeing either a photo or a drawing.
Let's see. Might be further back toward the beginning. If not, Angela, do you have one teed up that you could bring up?
I think slide 11.
Oh, right there it is. Right there it is.
Oh, the
Okay, can you describe the wall? What materials, height, etc.?
I'll let Angela take that. She's the architect. You muted, Angela.
Okay. I guess I'm not exactly understanding it. The wall between the alley and the adjacent property, is that what you're
Correct.
speaking of?
Correct.
Okay. Right now, that's just a fence on the property line.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about along our building. Yeah.
No.
My bad. Sorry, Angela.
It's okay. There's a six-foot fence.
I think to answer that question, our property goes right to the edge to keep the historic facade, and we've cantilevered the building a little bit and leaned back the building. The tip is actually, if you see on this picture, on the bottom left-hand side, the facade goes right to the alley, and the alley at that point is fairly narrow. We did lean the building back as it goes, behind that facade. We actually angled it back, and our property is literally at the top of the curb pan, and the fence actually between us and the Fillmore Garden Apartments is that the fence is actually owned by them. And the property right beside us, which was the Elliott, which was approved, they were maintaining that fence as well, all the way down that property line.
There may be a photo of it earlier in the presentation.
It is.
One more. Oh, we're almost there. Come on.
Nope, the fence is not shown.
Darn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't show it. Sorry. That's Randy's Jeep right there, and the fence is literally there's like about where the front tire of Randy's Jeep is. That the fence starts about right there.
I might be able to get it on Google Maps.
Okay. Olivia, does that meet the requirements in terms of a project coming through under the form-based code? Does it meet is it okay that the fence actually belongs to Fillmore Gardens? Is that okay?
I believe so, but I'll double check that while we continue.
Okay, appreciate it. Is there any plan for any lighting, either affixed to the building or along the Fillmore Gardens side of the alley? Is there any lighting that would be installed along the alley there?
I'll answer for. I would assume so. Yes. I mean, I'm the Christopher Cumming. I'm going to be building this building, so I will tell you that yes, we're going to have to light that to make sure that people know where the edges are and what not to hit and things like that, like not hitting the side of our building. So yes,
Right.
there will be lighting there.
And safety. Okay. Final question. Slide 19 appears to show a single Carlisle light on Walter Reed. Am I looking at it properly? Is that the only lighting fixture on that stretch of Walter Reed? A single Carlisle post?
No. Chase, I know you're on the line, but if I'm wrong on this, you can jump in. There's actually an existing street light just to the left of the existing alley.
Oh, okay.
On the left side of this page, there is a street light on the right side of this picture you're looking at right now, which sits atop the existing street signal.
Okay.
And then there's the proposed luminar that we're going to be putting in as well. So there'll be 3 street lights on this side of the this side of the building, Walter Reed side.
Okay, and that's considered sufficient for the number of linear feet that you're trying to cover. That's considered sufficient lighting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna exercise the chair's prerogative, and before I go to Ms. Stelhut, I want to follow up. Oh, Linda, were you done? I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
That was my last question. Thank you.
Okay. I want to follow up on Linda's question about the lights because, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe this is a question for staff, but the light that was just referenced at Walter Reed and Columbia Pike on the existing post is going to be replaced as part of the multimodal initiative, is it not? And when it's replaced, do we know that that the current engineering specs include a street light there in its place?
From the county side, I can double check what the specs for that replaced pole are, unless John, you have received those already, that information already.
I have not received it yet, no. But I mean, we will make sure that the areas that we were going to improve, we'll make sure that there's a location that it can accommodate a light. When the traffic signal moves away from our building, closer to Walter Reed.
And the Columbia Pike Multimodal Improvement Project does include standards for lighting. So, although we may not have the specs for that at this very moment, I imagine that they would still meet those spacing standards. So there would be some kind of replacement on that corner.
They would meet them for Columbia Pike, but I think that the question here is if that light is what we're relying on for the lighting of Walter Reed, is it going to be sufficient there, right? Because it could be that the light, ends up being around the corner from Walter Reed and lights that corner along Columbia Pike, but doesn't then light the first 15, 20 feet of Walter Reed.
We can verify the lighting plan.
Spec'd out.
Yeah, we can verify the lighting plan. A lot of
That's
those details typically get resolved during the civil engineering plan. So in this case, we're ensuring that it meets the form-based code, but a lot of those details are often, or those requirements kick in, or the final refinements are made during the CEP process when all of the final specs for the Columbia Pike improvements and Walter Reed improvements are dialed in. So it'll kind of be an evolving process there, but I can certainly try to get the latest information on some of those specs and relay those to you all.
Right. I get that some of it's downstream from entitlement, but I think that it's still a valid concern that Linda is raising. But thank you, Olivia.
Yes, and to fairness for the applicant, a lot of those designs are evolving separately from this application, as the county reacts to changing needs for the design of Walter Reed and Columbia Pike. So, again, even the information I could give you today may change slightly.
Right.
Between project approval and what gets implemented. But again, I can try to find what the latest information is.
I appreciate that, but it does sound like the applicant is somewhat relying on existing infra for making sure that block of Walter Reed is lit, right? And existing infra is changing. But I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor the point. I'm satisfied that you and your colleagues will confirm. So thank you for that. If there's nothing else you wanted to add, then I'll go to Michelle.
Thanks, Daniel. I mean, I support everyone, what everyone's talking about with the lighting. I wish we had a few more details in, or at least just general information, I guess, about the plans here. It's hard to support things going forward when there's just sort of promises made but not really shown on the plans anywhere. I just had a question. Can someone walk me through the ADA access to the building? Is all the new retail ADA accessible? I couldn't find any information about. I just want to kind of confirm that. Like if someone could, that one site plan that shows the different floors or something, if someone could walk me through that. And the only access to the residential is on the Walter Reed side, right? It's not on the Pike.
Yes, the residential access, this is Angela again from Deborah and Associates. The residential access is from Walter Reed. All of the retail is handicapped accessible.
Yeah,
as
all
well
the entrances.
Including that one just left of the
yes.
residential there?
Yes.
It's just got that single door.
Yes, all entrances are accessible.
Daniel, can I make one comment real quick?
Yes, of course, please.
This is John Regan. I think just to clarify some of one of the points that was made about lighting, both on Walter Reed and Columbia Pike, plus improvements that are done along both Walter Reed and Columbia Pike. There is again, the county has a capital improvement plan that they've got signs up right now saying that they're doing improvements along this road. And we are diligently working with county staff on what we can what we can do, what they can do. We're working as a team to try to make that happen. And so there are plans. This building will comply with whatever it needs to comply with, in terms of our promises being made. We're promising to build a beautiful building and stuff like that. And so it's difficult we're showing what's currently there, and whatever has to be put in there by us, we'll put it in there. But it's sort of a work in progress, because those plans, I think, as Olivia pointed out, they've changed multiple times since this project even started. And so we're definitely committed to making sure that we do what is right and what is appropriate for both Walter Reed and Columbia Pike. So I just wanted to make sure that clarify that.
I appreciate that, John, and I don't think anyone doubts that, but I also think that we all I appreciate you hearing that, and I think that others do as well. I'm going to go to Catherine first, and then back to you, Michelle.
Great, thank you. Hi, this is Kathy Guernsey, Columbia Forest. Actually, the slide that you're on, I think, is useful for my question. So in that bottom right-hand corner, but along the pike there, I think you have a sort of overhead shot of where that little bus transit stop is. And it looks as though at the moment there are two sort of black rectangles, which I guess are representative of the two benches that you referred to. My recollection was you said that cavity is about 16 feet wide. I don't know what the actual anticipated size of those benches is, but just looking in a couple of places in the presentation where that sort of overhead shot shows those two benches, there doesn't appear to be a huge amount of space around the benches. I recognize you have very limited depth to work with, but I just wanted to flag, if you haven't picked out, designs for the benches themselves, I just wanted to flag, could you make one of those benches either, the seat flip up, or do something so that if you have a wheelchair user who would like to be able to tuck themselves in under the shelter of that overhang, that there'd be sufficient space either on one end or on either side of the benches to allow them to do that. Because as it's represented in the diagrams currently, it doesn't look like there's space for a good 3 feet or so of space for somebody who's a wheelchair user to be able to take shelter in that transit stop.
Point well taken.
Yeah. Hi,
Yes.
Kathy. Thank you so much for that comment. I know that those benches, the type of benches will typically be prescribed by the county, but we can absolutely talk with the applicant about appropriate design considerations for those benches that would accommodate persons in wheelchairs.
Thank you. That would be great. Yeah, I recognize having a seat that flips up is maybe not ideal because it may not be possible for a wheelchair user, depending upon the nature of their disability. They may not be able to flip that seat up to be able to give themselves some space. So just wanted to flag that. I'm sure there's a design approach that would satisfy that need, and it might be slightly less seating area for other folks. But just wanted to flag that, and thank you for looking into it. I'm sure there's a design choice here that would satisfy that need, but just want to make sure we can make that bus stop accessible to everybody regardless of their accessibility needs. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Michelle, and then Ed.
I just have, I think, more on the benches actually. Who's maintaining that bench area? Is that private or public? Like, who's gonna suite behind those benches, etc.?
That's a good question. It's actually on our property, so it'd most likely be our management company that'll probably have to clean that area.
I don't know, John. This is Dave. I think that's a detail still to be worked out. I think the transit folks may want to have the ability to maintain that as they see appropriate, since it is part of a public bus system. I mean, we're going to be putting an easement on that walkway as well. So I think that's another good question, but that's a detail that I think will be flushed out as we go through the process and continue to work with county staff.
Olivia, can you just make sure that is fleshed out as you move forward past this process, because those sorts of things do kind of get forgotten.
Yes, absolutely.
Time,
and I think the nature of the timing of these form-based code advisory working group meetings, is unique in that we don't yet have a report available with all of the 50 or so conditions that would be attached to this project. Those will be available for Planning Commission, but we do have standard conditions about the maintenance of frontage areas, locations of easements, and both John and Dave are right. Those are discussions that we'll be having with our transit staff at the county to determine what those anticipated levels of service are and responsibilities are. So rest assured, those are details that we absolutely talk about in the coming months, and we do have some upcoming discussions with the applicant to work out a lot of those details.
And then I just had one other comment related to the benches, actually, and I don't know who this is for exactly, maybe Olivia, but that with getting rid of that tree, I mean, it's going to be brutally hot. It doesn't seem to me that there's like enough shade, really. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there's a little bit of an overhang, but like this afternoon sun, like today, it would have been brutal hanging out there, and it's unclear how someone waiting for a bus would get relief on a 100-degree day like this. And so if someone could talk about that, I would appreciate it.
I know one thing that the applicant is exploring, and again, still to be determined depending on where the depth and the location of some of these utilities on the frontage, but they are exploring a tree forward of that transit stop, so that we would still be able to maintain a minimum of a 60-foot transit station. That's very important, both for accessibility purposes, but also this is a transit station that will often have 2 buses stopped at the same time. So we do need to ensure that the front and back doors of those buses do have clear space for people to offload and unload. And that's another reason why providing street trees along this frontage has been challenging. But I do think if we can find a way to get a street tree at the front of that transit stop, that will help with some additional shade in that area. And then as well, we're exploring options to provide any street trees backwards of that 60-foot length of transit station. And then the other reason that we want to keep that 60-foot length clear is also just for visibility of the transit stop benches, which are now recessed within the building. We want the bus drivers to be able to see anybody who's waiting there at the stop.
Well, they won't be waiting there if it's 110 degrees in the heat index. But I just have one other sort of comment. And Mr. Regan, I appreciate your sincerity with with all of this and looking at issues. You can imagine just generally our distrust, especially here in Penrose, because there were a lot of promises made to us with the development next door that is now fallen into disrepair and will be, we expect, for a very, very long time. And so there's a general concern, and I'm speaking not just for myself, but I think for our entire community and our civic association president when I say, like, we are concerned based on sort of the, total abandonment of the rest of the block, we're concerned that, about this moving forward. It's taken you quite a bit of time to get through the process, and I know the historic preservation issues and whatnot. And so I appreciate the sincerity. There's a lot of skepticism in our neighborhood, just very generally, and I think it's because we've been burned so bad by the development next door, which I understand is you have nothing to do with, but you can imagine, especially our neighborhood, they're on edge about it, and so I just want to express that, and so I appreciate. Promises and whatnot, but there's a lot of distrust at the moment, and I just want to, put that out there, with anything that's going on, because, and so I've had people reach out to me already about this. They're concerned, like, are we kicking Ekman Pie out, and then it's just going to be another empty building, and we're going to get rid of the rest of any shred of local retail that we had on this block. And so I just want to put that out there. As something for everyone to be aware of, and that's why I tend to be a little skeptical, and so these little details matter to a lot of us. So.
I thank you for that. I appreciate the comment. Just so you know, I grew up at 200 South Jackson Street. Ate at the McDonald's, had pizza from that right where it says that retail space right there. That was the Columbia Pike Pizzeria. So I still own my mom's house at 200 South Jackson, and I still eat at the Broiler. So I'm a homeboy. So if I tell you I'm going to get it built, it will be built.
I appreciate that. The attorney for the project next door also is local, and it hasn't helped. So so I don't know, Dan, I know, I understand it seems to be going to Planning Commission shortly in September. I do wonder whether it would be helpful to talk to the Penrose neighborhood in some capacity, like if we had a meeting or something.
Absolutely.
Maybe that would help a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell you that we built 3565 Lee Highway, which is called Dominion Heights. Ask Maureen Ross, who was the Cherrydale HOA president. She had that same, didn't trust people's, what builders said that they're going to do. Ask her. She had that same stuff. I gave her references, and I also gave her, and we worked with her on Dominion Heights, and I think she would give us high marks on that. And I'll be more than happy to set up a meeting with Penrose.
Ed, I'm going to jump ahead of you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Michelle. I want to follow up on some of the issues that, Michelle, you were raising. Olivia, I think you don't have anyone from DES here, and I wouldn't expect you to have an answer for it anyway. But I want to ask you to please convey to DES that there are going to be questions, if not from others, then from me at Planning Commission about the status of the 16M. That is tangential to the transit station, but the value of the transit station as a community benefit or as a mitigating feature or whatever the importance of it is under the use permit is going to be raised. We are now 8 years out from the 16M being announced, and we're in a situation where it's still 21 stops inclusive between Greenbrier and Pentagon City, when it was promised to be 13 stops inclusive between Greenbrier and Pentagon City. We still don't have a high frequency limited stop connector. And so I don't know what the value of these transit stations is presently, and I don't know what the value of the transit stations is going forward from a comp plan perspective. I don't expect, Olivia, you to have anything more to, if you have anything more to say on that, then I'll pass it along to my DES colleagues. I'm happy to hear it, but please, my request to you is that you let your DES colleagues know that question will probably come up when this comes to planning commission, because I think that the delay in standing that up is part of the frustrations that that the communities are feeling, even if Michelle is not raising them directly. I'm happy to take any responses you might have, Olivia. Otherwise, I'll go to Ed. I see you're off mute, so I guess.
No, thanks for the comment. I'll just say noted. I'll pass that along, and we'll be prepared to respond at the Planning Commission meeting.
Thanks, Olivia.
Yeah.
And John, I'm glad to hear that you're willing to meet with Penrose. I think you're gonna find that to be a good meeting. So I'm glad to hear that. Ed, so I've kept you long enough. My apologies.
Yes, good evening. First of all, thank you, John, for your plans for the building. I'm representing Columbia Heights, so we're just directly across the street. And this is hopefully an exciting improvement to the neighborhood. I was a little late due to the storm, but I have a couple of basic questions that might have been covered before, but I didn't see how many parking spaces are in the complex.
64.
Just 64, okay. And then I do want to congratulate you also for your work to preserve the historic facade for the 2 stories. That is something that is important to us in the neighborhood. We're used to seeing that building there, and it's important to us. So I commend you for that. I also want to mention that I've been using that bus stop for 18 years, and your plan is a tremendous improvement over what we have now, which is you get off the bus and run. There's no place to sit or stand or anything. So I think what you're planning is a good improvement. However, I will mention, please do not mirror the bus stop bench that is across the street on the eastbound Columbia Pike bus stop at Walter Reed and Columbia Pike, because that big metal monolith is impossible to sit on for 6 months of the year. In the wintertime, it's freezing cold. In the summer, it's boiling hot. So please take that into account. We are human beings that would like to sit on a bench. We're not trying to fry eggs or anything. So please do not try and mirror that bench across the street. I know it's been called a piece of art and it's a wonderful advancement for the Pike, but nobody can sit on it. I'm also congratulate you on the bike rack. I believe, is there just one bike rack included?
I thought there was
That's
multiple.
on with street access.
Dave, you probably could answer that one better than I could.
There's at least
There
2.
are
There
there
are
are
2?
3
Okay,
located
because I just saw
along Walter
1.
Reed.
Okay. All right, that is okay. So there are 2. Perfect. And I did also want clarification on the number of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units, please.
I think it was 63 1 bed. Just a second.
It was on your, actually, it's on your presentation, Olivia.
63 1 bed and 25 2 bed.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And now I did want to check when I was looking at slide number, I think it's slide number 20. It appears that there's still a tree pit included, but you've said that the large tree that's there now is going to be removed, which I understand that it might have to come down. But can you clarify on that on slide 20 there are true, well, maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but well, no, it's not there. I was looking at slide 20.
The tree that's staying is, if you could see on this one that's up right now, the tree that's right at the edge of it's on the lower right-hand side.
Okay,
see
the eastern
little
edge.
X?
Okay.
Yeah, that's
The southeast.
That's the only one that right now, right now, doesn't mean it's the end. That's the one that the county said that can stay. The other one, there's 2. There's actually 3 tree pits there with 3 trees in them, and they wanted the 2 of them removed. And so the one that's the lower right-hand side is the one that they said that could stay. So we're still working on trying to get more trees there.
Okay, and I understand that this is all in process. The diagram that I was looking at, when I clicked on it from the website, it was showing that I thought there was a circle that was indicating a tree. but could be mistaken there.
No, you're right, Ed. I believe the applicant just recently updated these drawings. So
Okay, all
that
right.
one may be outdated.
Okay, that's all right. And then now I do also want to ask, in terms, are you going to have any green energy applications for the building? For example, solar on the roof or anything else that might be coming along?
We have there's green plant material on the roof right now. See, the green areas will be planting material on that.
Okay. Okay. Well, I congratulate you on the green plants on the roof, but I'm just wondering in terms of the project if there's going to be any green energy applications. But
always a Christopher Company's job always has. We try to do green building all the time.
Okay. All right. And
from
then my
a
last
form-based
thing.
code perspective, they're exempt from those green building requirements. The application was filed
I
before our green building
understand that they're
requirements were
exempt.
updated.
I understand that they're exempt, but where we're going for the future is away from oil and gas and green energy. So I just think here's a chance to maybe put something out there to show people that you're planning for the future. But my last thing would be, John, as you invite Penrose neighbors to a meeting, please also invite the residents of Columbia Heights. We would be very glad to just attend the same meeting with Penrose if we'd be welcome there.
Absolutely.
I pulled it all the way up.
Okay.
So apologies for the background noise. Those are my talking over you, Ed.
That's okay, Daniel. Those are my observations. But thank you very much. It looks like it's going to be a good project. Let's hope it bears fruit.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I failed to share my long day, little sleep. I too want to echo the comments that have been heard about. I'm also very pleased with the project, especially, among other things, especially the way that you've solved the problem at the bus stop. I want to encourage the applicant to be thinking when it comes to the bike racks, and there's if you similar to what I the way that I phrased it to Olivia, I'm happy for you to just take note. But if you have a comment, that's great too. But please take note for next outcomes. That I think that I would really encourage you, if you haven't already figured this out, if you haven't already planned accordingly, to make sure that any bike racks or bike facilities that you're installing will accommodate long tail and box bikes as well. We are increasingly we're seeing increasing utilization of long tail and box bikes, both for retail and cargo use, but also for family trips or multi-person trips. And consistent with this idea of moving away from fossil fuels, it's the encouragement and building of infra for alternatives, and sometimes alternatives within alternatives to that. So just please keep in mind that it's not enough anymore just to have a bike rack. You also have to have a bike rack that will specifically accommodate longer and larger bicycles. If you have thoughts, I'm happy to hear them. But I'm also, if your thoughts are we'll take it under advisement. I'm happy for that too.
Chase?
We've spec'd the county loop bike racks from, I can pull it up from where they're manufactured. And they're placed along, placed along Walter Reed. And right now they're at the typical spacing, generally speaking, around 3 to 4 feet between each other. However, there's ample room to space them further apart so that it can accommodate some of the wider bikes. And then I'll have to research as to different ways of securing a long tail bike, or I'm sorry, the other one was a box bike.
Box bike, yeah.
Yeah, to a standard um, as opposed to a standard loop bicycle rack.
Thank you, Chase. And the issue is not just the width, but it's also the length, right? If the depending on the orientation of the loop rack, right, you don't want to be in a spot where you are pushing, where someone is having to choose between securing their bike on the one hand, or putting putting one of the wheels of their bikes into traffic or into the pedestrian clear width on the other, because they are longer. They sometimes they can be the size of a small motorcycle, in terms of length, obviously not in terms of other measurements. But thank you for that. Any other, Olivia, you're on camera. So if you had something to weigh in with, I certainly invite that. I don't see any other hands at the moment.
Nothing else for me right now.
Mark.
Thank you. Just going back to the parking for a minute, I don't recall if there were any parking spaces allocated for retail. I understand there's 64 spaces, and is that 64 spaces to accommodate the 88 residential units plus the retail? And what I understand is this site does not need to adhere to any parking minimums because of its size. Am I correct in all that?
Yes, correct on the parking minimums, and I'll pass it over to the applicant to talk about the residential versus retail parking provisions.
This is Angela from Devereaux and Associates again. The 64 spaces are all underground, and they are all designated for the residential units. We do not have any parking allocated for the retail.
Wow. Okay.
Tell me again, remind us how much square footage there is for the retail.
About 6,000 square feet.
6,000. Mm-hmm.
I would just remind people that directly across the street at the large condo complex, the county sponsored a number of parking spaces in that building. So I think it's inherent for this project to educate people that there's plenty of parking across the street in underground parking. We've already paid for that.
That's absolutely right. Thanks, Ed, for pointing that out.
But come on, the reality is people are going to park in Fillmore and the neighborhoods back in there.
Do you think so? I mean, I don't mean that to be challenging. That's an earnest question. I'm trying to think of where I would park if I needed to go, if I needed to drive to one of these spots. And I'm not certain that I would prefer to walk from Fillmore Gardens to Columbia Pike over parking.
I think the preferred space would be in front of the AT&T building because there's nobody in there. That's the block.
And that building's not going away anytime soon.
No, it's not.
They'd also park behind the McDonald's in that parking lot back right in that area.
Yeah.
You'll get towed if you park behind the McDonald's.
No, yeah, oh yes, oh absolutely there, yeah. But there's
or I would probably park up Walter Reed. I'd probably park up a block or two on Walter Reed. Honestly, that's probably where I would go first.
Yeah,
I'm only thinking it through. I promise I'm not trying to challenge the concern about parking in Fillmore Gardens. I'm trying to think of what my own preferences as a driver would be if I were driving there.
Well, and just to fill out my pessimism, anybody that lives around here who's going to drive there in the first place, because driving anywhere on Columbia Pike is ridiculous. So we will all walk there, so we wouldn't be using parking in this building anyway. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Hopefully, at some point, I'll be able to hop on a 16M and take it the 5 stops away from Barcroft. But we also have to finish this multi-model improvement project one of these decades, right? I'm so happy with how that project is proceeding. It's just taking its time. Do we have any other questions from the AWG on this? If not, I'm going to turn it back over to Olivia. With my thanks to the applicant for being here with us tonight and for your presentation and for your work.
Yes, thank you all for your feedback. I think we have a few things that we'll be following up with you all on. I'll try to send those in a consolidated email in the coming weeks as we get answers to some of those questions. But again, always appreciate the input you all have. You make projects better.
You're here. Olivia, do you have anything for us after the applicant drops off?
Nothing else for now. I think, again, in the coming weeks, we'll be sharing an updated anticipated schedule for the fall regarding all of the kind of the next phase of Barcroft land use analysis. For your all awareness, that package of items, or at least the first package of items, is anticipated to go or will be going to the board this Monday. This Monday evening, and will be heard. So we do anticipate, board support of those items, and we'll follow up when we do. And then we also anticipate the applicant, the Jared Lynch applicant, filing a neighborhoods form-based code use permit for their first new construction project in the coming month. So we anticipate bringing some of those updates and eventually a review before you all this fall. So we'll keep you apprised of the schedule and some of the other work ahead.
Do you know, before you take the floor, Amy, do you know, Olivia, which where that is anticipated to be, where that first new build project is anticipated to be? I should say, are you at liberty to share where that is going anticipated to be?
Yes, it is. It is in all the public presentations now. It's located just east of the townhouse development project at Barcroft. That's the non-Barcroft portion. So all along
Was that
Columbia
called out
Pike.
at Planning Commission as being the first one?
It was when the applicant shared the phasing plan, but I know we moved through that fairly quickly. So it is one of the smaller new construction sites, but it will be 100% affordable.
Great to hear. Oh, okay, great. Great to hear. Amy and then Linda.
Hi, I just wanted to share with you an update on the Fillmore Shopping Center. I don't know if a lot of folks know, but recently they had both the HVAC systems and the electrical systems vandalized. There was somebody going in and pulling the copper out of those units for those 3 uncondemned units that were potential lease sites. They are currently working to address those issues. They don't have a definitive timeline for when the spaces will be available because they're still basically assessing the extent of the damage. And they also shared that the owners are working hard to find a suitable partner to revive the project. So just wanted to update folks on that. To be continued, I'm sure.
Thank you, Amy. If there are no questions or responses to that, I'll go to Linda then.
Whoops. Is there any update on the Exxon site?
No, we still don't have any changes. The comments from the first round of review that staff shared with the applicant, they're still working through those.
Okay.
So
thank you.
hopefully I'll have an update for you all this fall, but we'll let you know when we come back.
Thank you.
I guess I'm next. Is there any news on the Bank of America's project?
No news on that one either. Yeah, not for a couple of months now. So I think they're still working out details to try to move forward.
Okay, well, so they're still working on it. Okay, that's good enough. That's fine.
While we're asking for updates, how about the Sunrise development?
The are we talking about the elder care facility?
Yes. Yeah. The new one.
Just because that wasn't a form-based code project, I'm
Oh, you're
not sure
right.
of the status.
Okay, fair enough. You know, that's fine. Unless you know something, then we'll take it. But
If I did, I promise I would share. I just haven't heard an update on where the developers at in their process for next steps,
This
other
is a
than it
site
was
plan
approved.
project, right, Olivia?
Yeah, it was a site
Yeah.
plan project approved probably almost 6 months ago, I want to say.
Right. Yeah, because it was approved. Okay, the permitting isn't shown on the planning pages, so once it's entitled, it's well, I was going to point out the sort of planning status page on the website, which if I can find it, I'll send it around. I always have to re-find it every time, but that wouldn't actually be useful here because the updates on that sort of I think it says under construction, but like it doesn't get into, they're getting their permits to build, does it? I don't think it does.
Yeah, and for some people that can take upwards of 9 months from entitlements to get through all of that process. But I can certainly, I made a note of it and I can certainly, just for curiosity's sake, follow up with the planner on that one to see where that one's at. The other item that we will have coming to you probably later in the fall is the 2300 9th Street site, where they're proposing to remove that big office building and construct 16 townhomes for that site. So I think we anticipate that actually coming to you all in September and then to the county board later in the fall.
Oh, great. Ed, and Ed, back to you also if
Just
you got your hand
real
up
quick
again.
question. In terms of, my reporting back to the neighborhood, what is the next step for the project in terms of what the date? Is it, because you said it was going to come back to us in the fall. Does that come back to this committee or does it go to the board, or I'm not sure what you meant?
The project that you heard this evening.
Yes.
So the next step for that one is to visit the Planning Commission, which we anticipate in September, just pending resolution of any outstanding issues on the project. And then typically it would visit the county board in that same month. So it'd go to the county board later that September.
That's fine. So for right now, the plan is in September to go to the Planning Commission. Okay. Fine.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Hi, Olivia. This is Michelle. The 2300 9th Street, is there anything public that we can look at yet for that one?
Yeah, I can share. All of their plans are publicly available, so I can share a project webpage and or the link to all of the Permit Arlington plan sheets and anything the applicant has submitted.
Okay. Probably another one that Penrose would be interested in.
Sure.
The Permit Arlington page is really fun because, you can it's all sequential numbering, right? So like you can put in, I think SPLC -000, whatever, or SPLP. I think like those are for site plans.
Yes, you're correct.
It's fun to like you can sequentially find everything. We've got an issue with some torn pepperoni paper. Sorry.
Yes, that's correct. And I can provide a link to that site and the the project numbers for all of these, where you can access plan sheets as well, just for future information.
That's how our now reporters, present and past, always seem to know exactly what got filed when it got filed, because every day they would run a check for the next number in the sequence.
Yeah. And we have situations where ARL now has published information about a project being filed before staff is aware of it. So it happens more often than you'd think.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yep.
It's a fun page to monitor.
It sure is, especially the comment section.
No, I'm at the Permit Arlington page.
Oh, the Permit Arlington.
Maybe that should have a comment section.
That's dangerous.
This is the comment section for Permit Arlington. This is part of the comment section.
All right.
Anything else, Olivia?
Nothing else for me, but I'm sure you'll be seeing some follow-up emails in the coming weeks.
Okay. Well, we are. I'm going to, if that's the case, and if there's nothing else from the committee, I'm going to declare that we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback and for taking the time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe travels if anyone has
Thank
to
you.
drive.
Thank you.
Thanks
Good
to
night.
everyone.